A wild silverback walked right into a camp. What he brought with him shocked everyone. The velvet darkness of the Bwindi Impenetrable Forest was not silent. It breathed with a heavy, rhythmic pulse, a symphony of unseen insects and the distant, haunting hoot of a turco bird. In the center of a small research clearing, the air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and the sweet, decaying musk of fallen figs. This was the sanctuary of Dr. Julian Vance, a man whose skin had become the color of the earth he studied, and whose eyes held the quiet patience of the mountains. But tonight, the mountain had come to him. Out of the obsidian shadows, a presence emerged that defied every rule of primate behavior. A 400-pound silverback, a titan named Malaki, did not beat his chest or roar in a display of territorial dominance. Instead, he walked with a slow, agonizing gait, his knuckles dragging through the damp mulch with a sound like tearing silk. The researchers froze, their breath hitching in their throats as the metallic scent of old blood and the sharp, acidic tang of primal fear began to drift from the massive creature. Malaki did not stop until he reached the very edge of the firelight, his amber eyes reflecting the dancing orange flames with a look of such profound, articulate sorrow that Julian felt a physical ache in his chest. In his massive, leathered arms, Malaki was cradling something, not a fallen infant of his own kind, and not a kill from the forest floor. He was holding a bundle of tattered, mud-stained blue denim and a small, rusted metal box that belonged to a world he should have never entered. The silverback slumped to his knees, a sound escaping his throat that was neither a grunt nor a growl, but a fractured, human-like sob that vibrated through the very soles of Julian's boots. It was a moment where the boundary between species simply dissolved, leaving only the raw, pulsating heart of a mystery that would change everything they thought they knew about the wild. Before we go any further into this incredible journey and uncover what Malaki brought with him from the deep forest, I want to take a moment to truly welcome you to our community. If stories that explore the breathtaking emotional depths of the animal kingdom and the mysterious bonds we share with these magnificent creatures resonate with you, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell so you never miss a moment. We are so incredibly grateful to have you here with us. Right now, please take a second to drop a comment below, letting us know where in the world you are watching from and what time it is there. We love seeing how far these stories travel and the different time zones and lives they touch across the globe. Now, let us step back into the humid, moss-covered shadows of Bwindi to understand how a titan of the forest became a messenger of the heart. To understand the weight of what Malaki carried that night, one must first understand the man-made and God-made world of the Bwindi Research Outpost. The camp was a collection of canvas tents and rough-hewn timber platforms, smelling perpetually of damp canvas, kerosene, and the sharp, medicinal aroma of eucalyptus leaves used to ward off mosquitoes. Julian had lived here for 12 years, becoming a ghost among the shadows. He had followed Malaki's troop through 3 seasons of birth and 2 seasons of death, always maintaining the invisible distance, the 10-meter rule that kept the wild wild. Yet a silent bridge had been built over those years. It was a bridge constructed of shared silences during monsoon rains and the golden, honey-thick light of late afternoon when the guerrillas would lounge in clearings of wild celery. Malaki, the undisputed king of the ridge, had grown to recognize Julian not as a threat, but as a landmark of safety. The air between them during those peaceful years often smelled of crushed mint and the earthy, neutral scent of a forest at rest. Julian had documented Malaki's rise to power, noting the silverback's unusual capacity for empathy within his troop. How he would sit for hours with an aging female who could no longer keep up, or how he would gently brush the forest floor clear of sharp stones for the infants to play. There was a tether of trust, a thread of recognition that existed in the shared cadence of their breathing, a silent language that required no words, only the steady presence of one soul acknowledging another. However, in the weeks leading up to that fateful night in the camp, a shadow had fallen over the ridge. The atmosphere in the forest had turned clinical and cold, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Malaki's troop had begun to fracture. The trackers reported that the silverback had stopped leading his family to the high-protein bamboo shoots, instead spending his days staring toward the forbidden, jagged ravines of the Gully of Mists, a place where the air was always heavy with a low-hanging, sulphurous fog. His physical condition began to deteriorate with a terrifying speed. His once lustrous coat, usually the color of polished charcoal and moonlight, became matted and dull, smelling of stagnant water and the sharp copper scent of internal distress. Julian and his team watched through long-range lenses, their hearts heavy with the professional failure of being unable to intervene. They saw Malaki's muscles waste away, his powerful frame sagging as if he were carrying the weight of the mountain itself on his shoulders. The clinical signs were baffling. There were no visible wounds, no parasites, and no signs of the respiratory viruses that sometimes swept through the highlands. Yet Malaki was dying. He would emit low, mournful hoots into the mist, sounds that were met only by the indifferent drip of dew from the mahogany trees. The other guerrillas, sensing the impending collapse of their leader, began to drift away, leaving Malaki in a self-imposed exile of misery. The air in the research tent was thick with the smell of cold coffee and the ozone of high-stress electronics as the team reviewed footage, searching for a cause that remained invisible to their science. The night Malaki walked into the camp was the breaking point. The humidity was so thick it felt like a wet shroud against the skin, and the sky was a bruised purple, promising a storm that refused to break. When the silverback collapsed by the fire, Julian moved closer than he had ever dared, the 10-meter rule forgotten in the face of such absolute desperation. As Julian knelt in the dirt, the smell of the forest on Malaki's fur, a mix of wet earth, fermented fruit, and wood smoke, hit him with the force of a memory. With trembling hands, Julian reached for the blue denim bundle Malaki held. It wasn't just fabric, it was a child's jacket, stained with the red clay of the gully. And the metal box was a discarded medical kit from a vanished expedition, its hinges rusted shut by years of jungle moisture. But as Julian pried the box open under the flicker of his headlamp, the truth struck him with the force of a physical blow. Inside was not medicine, but a collection of items that told a story of a hidden tragedy. A small, weathered photograph of a human woman and a baby, a handful of dried medicinal herbs found only in the deepest ravines, and a tuft of fur that did not belong to a gorilla. It was the fur of a leopard. The realization dawned on Julian with a chilling clarity. Weeks ago, a local child from the village below had gone missing, feared lost to the treacherous terrain. Malaki hadn't been sick. He had been a guardian. He had found the child in the Gully of Mists, trapped and injured. Malaki had stayed with the boy, shielding him from the cold and the predators, sacrificing his own health and his status in the troop to keep a stranger's infant alive. He had been using the herbs instinctively or through some ancient ancestral knowledge to treat the boy's wounds. But the child had finally been found by a search party from the other side of the ridge just hours before, leaving Malaki with only the remnants of his vigil. The jacket the boy had lost and the box he had clung to. Malaki wasn't suffering from a virus, he was suffering from a profound, acute case of grief of the protector. He had lost the being he had poured his soul into saving, and he didn't understand why the child was gone. The resolution began in that very moment of shared understanding. Julian didn't reach for a tranquilizer or a stethoscope. Instead, he reached for a burlap sack and filled it with the scent of the camp, the smell of home, of safety, and of the very herbs Malaki had been seeking. He sat on the ground, mirroring Malaki's slumped posture, and began to hum a low, rhythmic vibration, a sound he had heard the gorilla mothers use to soothe their young. For a long hour, the only sound in the camp was the crackle of the fire and the synchronized breathing of two different species. Slowly, the tension that had held Malaki's massive frame rigid for a month began to dissolve. The silverback's breathing, which had been shallow and jagged, smoothed out into long, deep inhalations. The acidic scent of pain that had radiated from him was replaced by the neutral, calming scent of a creature finally being seen. Malaki reached out a massive, gentle finger and touched the blue denim jacket Julian held, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they now shared. Over the next several days, the recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Malaki stayed on the periphery of the camp, eating the succulent shoots of wild celery Julian provided. His strength returned with every sunrise, his coat regaining its charcoal sheen as the sulfur of the gully was washed away by the clean mountain rains. They would sit together in the dappled morning light, the air smelling of fresh clover and wood smoke. Two survivors of a mystery that science could never fully quantify. This story leaves us with a philosophical legacy that challenges the very foundations of our understanding of the natural world. It teaches us that empathy is not a uniquely human achievement, but a universal frequency that vibrates through every sentient heart. Malaki didn't need a clinical diagnosis, he needed his sacrifice to be witnessed. He needed the world to know that a beast was capable of a love so fierce it almost cost him his life. It reminds us that animals possess a sixth sense of love, an intuitive ability to recognize the sanctity of life, even when that life belongs to a different species. It suggests that the divide between the wild and the civilized is a thin, permeable membrane, easily crossed by the sound of a heartbeat or the scent of shared sorrow. Malaki was a king who chose to be a servant, a titan who found his greatest strength in his vulnerability. We learn that intelligence isn't just about the tools we build or the words we speak, it is about the emotional intelligence to feel the pain of another and the courage to stay in the darkness until the light returns. As we watch the final shots of Malaki standing at the crest of the ridge, his silver back gleaming in the setting sun as he lets out a triumphant, resonant roar that echoes through the valleys, we are reminded that some of the most important stories in history are the ones told without a single word. Malaki has returned to his troop, a leader once again, but his eyes will forever hold the depth of the night he walked into the firelight. If this journey into the heart of the Bwindi Forest has moved you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more stories that bridge the gap between humans and the magnificent animals we share this earth with. Your support allows us to keep telling these vital stories of connection and healing. Before you go, we want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed an animal show a level of intuition or empathy that completely shocked you? Whether it was a pet at home or an encounter in the wild, share your story in the comments below. We read every single one, and your experiences are the heartbeat of this community. Thank you for watching, and remember to always listen with your heart, for it speaks a language that requires no translation.